Welcome to Enlighten Wisdom, beloved souls. They laughed at you, dismissed you, and called you crazy, delusional, and paranoid. They waved off your warnings, scoffed at your insight, and convinced themselves that you didn't know what you were talking about. But now your words won't leave them alone. Every sign, every event, every downfall, one by one, reality is proving you were right all along. They replay your voice in their minds, trying to convince themselves that it's all just a coincidence, but deep down they know better. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Luke 8:17. The truth is merciless. It doesn't need permission, it doesn't seek approval, and it doesn't wait for them to be ready. It reveals itself at the appointed time, whether they like it or not. And that time has come. The signs they ignored, the energy they laughed at, and the gut feelings they suppressed are all hitting them at once. They can't unsee it. They can't unhear your voice echoing through their regrets. They remember everything, the warnings, the insight, the truth you tried to share. And worst of all, they remember how they treated you. They recall the way they dismissed you, rolled their eyes when you spoke, and whispered behind your back, mocking you as if your wisdom was foolishness. But now those same people sit in silence because everything you said is happening. The people they trusted are revealing their true colors. The situations they swore would never change are falling apart. The decisions they defended are leading them straight to ruin, and you don't even have to say, "I told you so," because they already know. They feel it with every consequence that hits them. They see it with every piece of their illusion that crumbles. They hear it in the quiet moments when their own thoughts turn against them. Your words are no longer just words. They are echoes. Echoes of the truth they ignored. Echoes of the wisdom they rejected. Echoes of you. And they can't escape it, not now. Not ever. You warned them. Not once. Not twice. More times than you should have. You saw the cracks forming while they admired the paint. You saw beyond the illusion, but they refused to listen. They followed charisma instead of character, chose deception over discernment, lust over loyalty, and status over substance. And now, it's all falling apart. The lies they believed, the promises they clung to, the illusions they wrapped themselves in, shattered. The job they thought would never fail is collapsing. The relationship they swore was unbreakable is in ruins. The trends they followed blindly are destroying their peace. They thought they were secure, thought they had it all figured out. They laughed at your warnings, called you dramatic, negative, and too cautious. But you weren't being negative. You were being right. They wanted to believe in the fantasy, the fairy tale, the carefully crafted illusion that made them feel powerful, important, and untouchable. But illusions, they don't hold weight. They didn't survive the storm, and now they stand amidst the wreckage, searching for something solid to hold on to, but there's nothing left. The people they trusted are gone. The promises they believed in have crumbled. The path they were so certain would lead them to greatness has ended in nothing but emptiness. Meanwhile, you remain untouched because you saw it coming. You understood that truth always outlives the lie, that real stability is never built on deception, and that if something requires blindness to believe in, it was never real to begin with. And now they see it too. But it's too late. Scrambling, panicking, they desperately try to salvage something from the ruins. But illusions don't leave behind anything worth saving. They chose the lie, and now the truth is choosing them. They know better now. You weren't trying to control them, you were trying to save them. You handed them the knowledge that could have spared them from this downfall, but they rejected it, mocked it, dismissed it. They thought they knew better. Now the pain of knowing they could have avoided all of this is something they carry in silence. But you don't need an apology. You don't need them to say you were right. You already know because you can feel it. The weight of their regret lingers in the air whenever they see you. They watch you thriving, standing untouched, unbothered, unshaken by the disaster that is now consuming them. And it burns them because they remember how they spoke to you, how they scoffed at your warnings, how they looked at you with arrogance and condescension as if you were the one who didn't understand. But now, that certainty is gone, replaced by silent shame. You don't need to hear them admit it. Their actions say it all. They hesitate before speaking your name. They look away when you enter the room. They avoid conversations that would force them to confront the truth. But the truth lingers, undeniable. You can feel it in the way they hang on to your words now, in the way they hesitate before dismissing you, in the way they wish they had listened. And it haunts them. Because they could have had peace, wisdom, and protection, instead they have regret. And regret is a heavy burden to carry. But you? You carry nothing. You let them make their choice, and now they have to live with it. You were the first to see it, the first to say it, the first to know the truth before anyone else dared to acknowledge it. And how did they respond? They dismissed you. They called you extreme. They called you paranoid. They called you crazy. They laughed at your words and scoffed at your insights. You weren't qualified, you weren't credible, and you weren't someone they needed to take seriously. But now, the very same things you were mocked for are being repeated by leaders, professionals, and experts. The very people they blindly trusted. And suddenly it's not crazy anymore. Now, it's wisdom. You watch as the same people who ridiculed you now nod in agreement when someone else says the exact same thing. They repost it, quote it, and call it groundbreaking. But where was that energy when it was coming from you? Where was that respect when you were the one speaking? That's how the cycle works. First, they ignore you. They roll their eyes, pretend they didn't hear you, and act like your words carry no weight. Then they mock you. They laugh, call you delusional, and make you the joke so they don't have to face the truth. Then comes the moment of realization. They see that you were right all along, and suddenly the laughter stops. They start paying attention, start seeing what you saw, but by then it's too late. And finally they pretend they knew all along. They repeat the very words they mocked, twisting them just enough to make it seem as though they were the ones who uncovered the truth. They want to erase the fact that you saw it first because admitting you were right would mean admitting they were blind, and their pride won't allow that. But you don't need their validation. You don't need their credit. Because you've already won, not by arguing, not by forcing them to see, but by knowing that the truth speaks for itself. You don't have to chase recognition because those who once ridiculed you are now quietly taking notes. They won't say it out loud, but you can feel it. Now they are watching, not openly, not with praise or acknowledgement, but from the shadows. They think you don't notice, that they're subtle, careful, hidden in the background. But you feel the shift in their energy. The way conversations quiet when you speak, not out of dismissal anymore, but out of silent study. The way they linger just a little too long when they see your name. The way they scroll through your old words, rereading what they once laughed at. The way they listen, not to argue anymore, but to understand, because now they need to know. How did you see what they couldn't? How did you know what was coming before it arrived? How did you, the one they looked down on, the one they swore had no direction, end up ahead? They won't admit it. They won't come to you and say, "I should have listened." But their actions betray them. They mimic your words, pretending the thoughts are their own. They copy your insights, piecing together the wisdom they once discarded, hoping that by some miracle they can still grasp what they missed. But it's too late. Because wisdom is not just information, it's the ability to see beyond the illusion, and they have already proven they lack the sight. Now you are their quiet teacher. The very person they dismissed has become their guide. They study you because they no longer trust themselves. Every decision they made, the ones they swore were right, the ones they defended with arrogance, led them nowhere. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to call them out, demand recognition, or force them to acknowledge the truth. Because they already know. They wouldn't be watching if they didn't. They wouldn't be studying you in silence if they didn't realize that somewhere along the way, they got it wrong. They won't clap for you. They won't congratulate you. But that doesn't matter, because they are learning from you in silence. You were never meant to be validated by them anyway. You never rushed while they ran after shortcuts, chasing the next trend, jumping from one thing to the next. You stayed grounded. You trusted what you knew was right. You moved with purpose, not desperation. They mocked you for it, told you that you were too slow, too cautious, too disciplined. While they were busy cutting corners, chasing shortcuts, and seeking instant gratification, you were building something real. And now, look at the difference. Those who sought quick results burned out. Those who refused to commit lost their way. Those who thought they had found an easier path are now realizing the cost of their impatience. Meanwhile, you've built something unshakable, something they can no longer ignore. They don't want to admit it, but they see it. They see how you have remained stable while they crumbled under pressure. They see how your consistency has set you apart. They see that while they spent their time chasing, grabbing, and forcing, you never had to chase anything. Because real power attracts. And now people are noticing. They're watching the way you move, the way you never fold under pressure, the way you stand firm in what you know. They see the contrast between your solid foundation and their instability. And the best part, you never had to prove anything. You never had to beg them to understand. You never had to argue for your worth. Time speaks for itself, and now they can't deny it anymore. They counted on your failure. They expected you to crumble. They stood on the sidelines, convinced that the moment you walked away, you would fall apart. Because in their minds, you needed them. You needed their approval, their validation, their presence to survive. But what happened? You didn't just survive, you thrived, and that terrifies them. Because now they have to ask themselves a question that eats away at their pride. What if I was wrong? What if you were never weak? What if they were never your foundation? What if they weren't the ones holding you up, but the ones holding you back? They don't want to admit it. They don't want to face the truth that while they remained stagnant, you evolved. While they wasted their time watching, hoping, waiting for you to break, you built something unshakable. And now, they're the ones struggling. Struggling with the fact that they were never your source of power. Struggling with the realization that you don't miss them. Struggling with the truth that you never looked back. You weren't supposed to rise higher. But you did. And the higher you go, the smaller they feel. Now, they're the ones wondering if they should have stayed close to you, but that's not your concern, because you never needed them and you never will. You don't need their recognition. You don't need their validation, their apologies, or their approval. But you see it happening. The same ones who mocked your approach are now adopting it. The ones who laughed at your discipline, your intuition, your mindset. They're now trying to imitate it. They once swore you were doing too much, called you obsessive, thought your methods were extreme. Now suddenly, they're moving in silence. Now suddenly, they're practicing the very things they once dismissed. You don't need them to say it out loud because their actions expose them. They once criticized your work ethic, and now they're trying to match it. They once rolled their eyes at your intuition, and now they're desperately trying to develop their own. They once swore your mindset wouldn't get you far, but now they're studying the very same principles they laughed at. The truth is, they always saw your power. They just didn't want to admit they were too blind to understand it at first. It was easier to mock you than to learn from you. Easier to dismiss you than to accept that you were ahead of them. But time is a ruthless teacher. And now, they are forced to acknowledge what they once denied. They won't say you were right, but their silence speaks louder than any words ever could. Their sudden shift in behavior, the way they carry themselves differently, the subtle changes in how they speak and act. It's undeniable. They may never acknowledge it out loud, but deep down they know exactly who they're learning from. At first, they dismissed you. They laughed at your insights, rolled their eyes at your warnings, and convinced themselves that your perspective wasn't worth considering. But now life has proven you right in ways they can't ignore. You thought you were just sharing your thoughts, just offering your truth, your insights, your perspective. But you were planting seeds. Seeds that have now taken root in the very minds that once rejected them. Even the ones who ignored you at first, the ones who doubted you, the ones who mocked you. They're coming back. Not to apologize, not to admit they were wrong, but because they can no longer escape the reality that you were right all along. They remember your words, even if they act like they don't. They remember the warnings they dismissed, the wisdom they rejected, the lessons they refused to learn, until the consequences forced them to. And now, they repeat your words, sometimes verbatim, as if they were their own. They echo your wisdom in conversations, carefully pretending it came from somewhere else. They won't give you credit, but you recognize your own voice in their actions. You see it in the way they now approach situations with caution, in the way they guide others using the very lessons they once ridiculed. They may never say, "I learned this from you," but you know the truth. And so do they. That is the power of your impact. Your words were never wasted. Your wisdom was never in vain. You never needed their credit because truth speaks for itself and truth is relentless. At one point, they didn't just disagree with you. They made it their mission to prove you wrong. They fought against everything you said, not because they had better knowledge, not because they saw something you didn't, but because accepting your truth meant confronting a reality they weren't ready to face. Admitting you were right would have meant admitting they weren't as wise as they believed themselves to be. So they resisted, they mocked, they ignored. But now, they are sitting in the mess they created, looking at the ruins of their own decisions. Everything they swore would work is crumbling. The choices they defended so aggressively now haunt them. The warnings they laughed at are now staring them in the face, undeniable, inescapable. And the worst part? They have no one to blame but themselves. Some will never admit it, their pride won't let them. They will act like nothing is wrong, like they don't see the disaster unfolding around them. But you see it. You see the way they hesitate now. You see how they carefully avoid the topics they once used to challenge you on. You see the weight in their eyes, the silent struggle they try to mask. You hear it in their conversations, the subtle regret, the forced confidence, the careful wording they use to avoid giving you credit. But the truth is undeniable. They know exactly what happened. They know they had the chance to listen, to understand, to learn, and they chose not to. Now they are left with the consequences of their own decisions while you stand firm, untouched by the storm they created. Because you never needed their approval. You never needed their validation. You never needed them to say, "You were right." Because deep down, they already know. And that is enough. They will suffer in silence before they ever let the words, "You were right," leave their lips. Their pride is too heavy, their egos too fragile. But their actions betray them. They hesitate now, they move differently. The same people who once looked at you with arrogance now avoid your gaze, their certainty shaken. They won't admit it, not openly, not directly to you. But you can feel it in the way they act. Some of them are watching you differently now. The dismissive tone is gone. The condescending smirks have faded. The eye rolls that once greeted your wisdom have turned into quiet contemplation. Because deep down, they know. They know that the very truth they mocked was the one thing that could have saved them. They know that if they had only listened, they wouldn't be in the position they are in now. They know that your insight, the knowledge they rejected so forcefully, was not something to be ridiculed, but something they desperately needed. And now they live with that regret. They sit with the weight of their own choices, knowing they had a chance to see what you saw, to understand what you tried to tell them, but they refused. And now, it's too late to undo what's been done. But you don't need their apology. You don't need their validation. Watching the truth reveal itself is enough. And whether they acknowledge it or not, they will never doubt you again. The same ones who once ridiculed you are now standing on shaky ground. Their confidence is slipping. Their certainty is unraveling. They were so convinced they had it all figured out, they thought they were in control, that their way was the right way. And now, they watch helplessly as everything they built on false beliefs crumbles before their eyes. Meanwhile, you remain firm, unmoved. Because you never needed their approval to begin with. You never sought their validation, never asked them to believe in you for the truth to remain the truth. The truth stands on its own, and now it's proving itself. And as it does, the very ones who rejected you are beginning to seek direction. The thinkers, the seekers, the ones who once hesitated to stand beside you. Now, they are drawn to your presence. Not because you demanded their respect, but because you were never just speaking. You were leading. And now they finally see it. What was once ridiculed is now respected. What was once ignored is now embraced. What was once fought against is now the very thing people are searching for. You never had to prove yourself. You never had to convince them. Because truth does not require persuasion. It only requires time. And now time has spoken. Those who can finally see are gathering around you. Not because you begged for their attention, not because you sought their recognition, but because real leadership does not chase. It attracts. And you keep moving forward. You don't look back. You don't need their apology. You don't need their recognition. You don't need their approval, because you already know what you carry. While they sit in regret, in disbelief, in confusion, you rise. You ascend higher, leaving behind the weight they are now forced to carry. They wanted to forget. They wanted to erase the fact that you saw what they couldn't, that you knew what they refused to accept. But the truth? It won't let them. It lingers in their minds. It echoes in their memories. The words they once dismissed replay over and over, haunting them with the realization that they were wrong. Your presence is imprinted in their consciousness, a reminder of what they refuse to acknowledge. They may never admit it. They may never say the words, "I should have listened," but they will never forget that you were right. And now, you move differently, lighter, sharper, unshakable, because you were never waiting for them to understand. They had their chance. You are already ahead. Have you noticed the shift? Have you seen how people are quietly returning to your wisdom after once dismissing it? Let them know truth is never forgotten. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlighten Wisdom.